Greetings, my name is Ev, and today I will be taking a look at this really interesting palette from LIGHTWISH. Now, this is a really peculiar palette. It is designed to be incredibly compact, so it feels a bit like a transformer palette in a way. And we have a diagram here on the cover, but the photos that I saw of this online were really interesting, and it came with this stack of paper. It's a square format with rounded corners, 100% cotton paper in cold pressed texture, and 300 GSM, which is a very standard weight for watercolor paper, and this has 60 sheets. But yeah, this palette, let's take a look. It doesn't come with a user's manual, so I will do my best, but this is gonna be sort of just the first look at it. As you can see, it has this screw hole at the bottom. This, you can attach it to a portable easel, to a tripod, so that's really cool. Pieces, I'm seeing an arrow here, so that's why I pulled this part first. Here we have our beautiful little ceramic palette. Here we have another mixing area that's a sort of ceramic surface as well. The other part that seems to be easy to access is this here. I will play with this and I'll figure it out, and then I'll be able to be more concise sharing my knowledge of this palette. So see ya in a bit. Alright, so I have set up this little palette. I'm still very impressed at the design, to be honest. Like, this is nice and compact, and I really like it, and I really like all the extra features here, like the place to attach it to a tripod or a stand of some sort. That's really cool. And I've familiarized myself with this palette, so these sort of bolty bits, you don't really have to tinker with them much or at all. So the palette is mostly functioning with magnets. So the first magnet is the one that holds it closed. Here you can see it. There's the corresponding bit in the lid. And then this part here becomes your easel. It is made in a way that this part sits on top of this. I have to perhaps see if there's a way to change the angle, but from what I've seen, I haven't really found any, like, I don't know if this doesn't seem to, oh, maybe this way. A bit better. So yeah, it's a bit of tinkering. This one here is mostly to hold the ceramic palette in place. Here we have a mixing area that is this sort of ceramic finish that we've seen a lot lately. Really cool. And then these, you don't have to unscrew them. You just have to use them as a pole to take this thing out. This is the first compartment of pans. You can put 8 pans in here. The way it is made is there is a magnet at the bottom here. It's gonna be hard to see. I don't want to necessarily tip it over. So the way you put the pans, or you tinker with the pans in here, is you have this divider that you can remove, and then you can slide off all the half pans. I've tried a couple of different other brands of half pans and pans to put in here. This is the only compartment that could possibly have full pans, because of the way you insert the half pans. And then at the bottom, there's the 2 magnets I was mentioning. And these attach to a magnet here on the edge. So whether you want your paints to be out, it's going to be attached like this. And it is quite a strong magnet. Like, you can't just take it out. You have to really pull on it. And then when you want to store it, you push it in and it sort of locks with the second magnet. So that's that. And yeah, like I said, I've tried a bunch of different other pans in here, and for a lot of the full pans that I tried in here, they were a bit too high. You could probably jam them in there, but it would be sort of really difficult to get them out. So that's something you can do, of course, but you have to be mindful of that aspect of it. And I'm quite fond of this system. Perhaps the only thing that I would personally add to this is maybe to have some sort of felt stopper or something. It's not too much of a problem with these are really snug, but with the other section, like if you have a loose one, it might get annoying if you try to pick up paint with it. So on the other side here we have another pull for a similar drawer, but this one is more of a accessory drawer, or perhaps a water container. Now this one, the magnet is here. There is only one magnet on this one. So yeah, it is straight under the ceramic palette too. So this is not like excessively thick. So perhaps it's something to be mindful of. But that's basically how this part is set up, like this. And then you have the place for the ceramic palette. I like that there's a hole here to be able to grab it. And then you can sort of lock it by screwing this. I wouldn't screw this one too tight because I would worry about cracking the surface, but it is a really fun system. I guess you could also possibly just take this off and use this pot as your water container, basically. Like you put your water here, you rinse your brush, you mix, and then you have your paints out. Speaking of the paints out, this is the other, or rather the main paint compartment. It is similarly working with magnets for this one. So you take this part off, and again, the pans, they slide out like this. And it's not exactly the same size, because if you notice, like this one, the pans are on the other, like they're stacked this way instead of this way. Does that make sense? They're like this instead of being like this. So here you cannot really fit a full pan. It would be only half pans. And also here, there is a bit more give here. So these tend to move a bit more. So when I mentioned using a stopper, or perhaps to put a little bit of adhesive felt on each pan so that when you stack them in there, there's a bit of a buffer between each. Anyway, there's a quick way to work this out if, like me, that's the kind of thing that would bother you. This is how this piece is made. So we have two magnets on this side with the same idea of, you know, being able to sort of lock this part out like this. Now there's a magnet only on one side, so it's a bit like wobbly, but it works. And technically you would also have this partition, this wall rather, here. So like this. And I think this part is intended as a brush rest. I have yet to test it out, but from what I understand, this is sort of the usage for this space. As a quick aside, this set comes without paint, you've seen, but I obviously found paints to put in it. Now, what I opted to do is I couldn't really just switch out the pans for other pans that I already have. As I tested it, I saw that it don't really fit. Since I couldn't fit any of the pans that I already have, I tried a few. I tried Roman Schmal, Winsor Newton, Schminke, and a generic pan, and they wouldn't really fit well in these. It was either they were too snug or too loose. And since the sort of setup is not the same between these two parts of the palette, sometimes they would fit okay in here but wouldn't fit in here. So what I opted to do is I put back the pans that came with the set back in here, since these fit rather well, and I looked at what I had in terms of paints that were already dry. Over the years I've accumulated a bunch of paint blobs, if I can say that. So I have a bit of everything and odds and ends, and I looked through it and I found, so these 12 here, the sort of square blocks, these are all Dillerani professional paints that came in my mini palette, and I eventually took these out to restore the palette, and I, instead of putting them back in, I, you know, set it up differently. So these are Dillerani paints. I'm pretty sure this blob is a opera pink of some sort, either from Holbein or from Mugello. And then in here I have a odd piece of watercolor stick, and then I have 4 Schminke colors that I set out to dry myself in these like molds. So that's why it's like a half circle. That's how I tend to store my very granulating paints. So in this drawer here, I have mostly granulating paints. And then in the main drawer here, I have regular paints, let's say. So basically that's how I set it up. Now I have yet to, you know, really try it by painting something and really testing it out. There is one thing that from experience I try not to do when painting outside, and I know it's not very convenient, but I try not to have my water in the same module as everything else, because it's so easy to spill water. And if you spill it on your palette, on your painting, it's really annoying. And you never know what might happen. There could be a gust of wind, you might drop the thing. So this compartment here, it might be the thing that I stuff like a paper towel in here, or like a piece of a rag to, you know, to dry my brush on. So that might be how I use the space for this particular palette, and to carry my water in a container that I'm more comfortable with. But as a whole, you could definitely put your water in here and have this palette be all that you need to bring. When you close everything, it is really nice and compact. It's not a big item. It is perhaps a little bit weighty. I'll weigh it and I'll give you the weight of it. But overall, I really like it. I'm also gonna try attaching it to a tripod and a special arm for palettes. Anyway, so I have a couple of tools that I want to try it with, but I really like it. I like that it's mostly plastic, so it's not as breakable. Now there's, of course, the ceramic sort of insert in it here that I would perhaps worry about it being the first thing to break if I were to drop this palette. Ideally, you don't want to drop your palette, but it can happen. So aside from that, and perhaps having a bit of felt or a protective thing to put on top when I carry this, I think this is a really, really nice little palette, and I will be painting something with it, so I will get to it right away. Okay, so this is the really interesting block of paper, and I say block because check this out, it is glued on two sides. And then the two other sides are unglued, so it is technically like a block. There's no cover, there's no like particular case or backing to it, but in terms of size, it is relatively compatible with this if you were to, I don't know, stack them or something. And then I don't know what it's like when you prop it in. It feels like it's a bit hefty. Is there something that I'm not getting here? Am I missing something? Okay, I'll try to I'll try to research it out a little bit, but it's fine. It's just a bit hefty, you know. Like, look at the thickness of this. This is like 60 pages. It kind of works. Like, it mostly sits, if you can get it to sit on the ball. Like, if I were to paint on it, I would worry that it would, and then I'd have a different problem. But I will indeed do a little bit of research. Otherwise, it's quite possible to just, you know, have this in your hand and have this on your easel or your tripod or whatever, and you paint, you know, you hold this as you paint instead of holding the palette. Let me try this out and I'll come back with my first-hand experience of all this. And I'm back with my impressions on using this travel palette. So I will start with using the palette itself. I really like the mixing areas, both of them. The removable ceramic palette is exactly what you'd expect from a ceramic palette. It is really smooth, it mixes really well, and the paint spreads out nicely on it. You can definitely see what you're working with. The other ceramic surface, the one that is not removable, works also really well. It tends to be just a little bit more, but that's also because it is brand new. With a bit of wear and tear, it's gonna be just fine. There is not a lot of mixing areas on this palette, I'm fully aware, but the ones we get are really nice. As for using the trays with the pans in it, that was definitely an interesting experience because I've never really tried a system like this before. The palette doesn't seem to want to fall down, like the magnets are really strong. Initially, I was really worried that this palette would be a bit too wobbly with the way the trays are set up, but it is surprisingly sturdy. Like when I attached it to the support arm, I was able to pick up paint and none of the trays really wobbled. That was a good surprise. A feature that I really like is the possibility to attach a tripod or an easel or an arm of some sort to the palette to make it hand-free basically. So you don't have to hold it and you don't need a table to put it down. And I have 3 items that I can use to test this out. I have a small portable tripod, I have a larger tripod, and I have an attachment, a sort of arm that is meant to be used with painting palettes. Both my photography tripods have a detachable plate, which is kind of standard for photography and filming tripods. You basically attach the plate to your camera or your palette in this case, and then you can easily clip that into the tripod. So yeah, for the mini tripod, the smaller one, when I attach the plate to the palette, I can attach it all the way through, but the plate stays loose. It kind of spins around a lot. It doesn't grip on the palette. You can clip it back into the tripod, but it kind of makes the palette really unstable, and I don't think it would be a functional way to use this combination of tripod and palette. Then I tried my regular tripod, and again, the detachable plate was a little bit too loose for me. It doesn't move around as much as it did with the small tripod, but it's still not fixed in place, so the palette moves when you try to use it, which is not the goal of this setup. Now, for these 2 tripods, I think the situation could be fixed if we added a little bit of a non-skid adhesive to the bottom of the palette. I think the palette on its own could benefit from a non-skid adhesive on the bottom. I think it would help with stability if you decide to use it on a table, and then when you attach a tripod plate to it, it would also give it a bit more grip so that the plate would stay in place and not rotate as much. The third item that I have to attach a palette to, the little arm thing, worked out really well. This one, I was able to make it a bit more flush with the palette possibly, and it has this non-skid layer on it, so I think that helped. But also I think since it's smaller, it worked out better to get really close to the palette. With this one, the palette was really stable, it was really firmly attached to the supporting arm, so it didn't move at all. That worked out really well. The only issue perhaps with this support is that you need something to attach it to. I think it is intended to be used in a way that you attach it to your chair as you settle down to paint. You could attach it to a table, but at the same time, if you have access to a table, you really need a supporting arm as well. So perhaps that's the one thing that's a bit tricky with this one. Also, I tried to find some info, but I didn't find anything on my own. There are two little screw holes at the bottom of the palette in the front. And I'm not entirely sure what these are for. They seem to go all the way through the plastic in terms of the hole itself, but I tried looking at some sort of easel attachments. I couldn't find any that had an attachment that would match with this setup of screw holes. If you know what they are for, please let me know in the comments. I would really like to know. I did a few demo paintings using the palette. For the first one, I wanted to use the palette on a table, but to put the paper on the easel part of the palette and to paint it using the palette itself. Now, I don't have any travel brush really that fits in the compartment for them. The only one I have is just way too small to be fun to use, so I used my regular brushes for this. For this particular demo, I used the papers from the binder palettes that I just cut off the part with the holes. I felt like this format would fit really well in this palette as well because the easel is sort of narrow and tall. And I know that I did just a quick color sketch, but the mixing areas worked out really well. I was able to pick up the paint from the trays. It is a bit awkward to use in a way because I'm not all that familiar with this kind of setup. But I really like how quick it is to set up, basically. So when you settle down to paint, all you have to do is pop open the lid of the palette, take out the drawers for the paints, and you're sort of technically good to go. And it's all contained in one thing. So that's something that I thought was really practical to use. I wanted to also try the cube of paper, the block that is glued on two sides. And I didn't really question it all that much when I sort of unwrapped it. I saw a paper surface and that's what I did my first demo on. But then as I was looking at it, I was like, well, this paper is really, really smooth. So I took that painting off the block and noticed that the back side of the paper is much more textured. So I'm wondering, is this actually the right side of the paper? Was I using this upside down? I sort of defaulted to the fact that, oh, there's a cover paper. And in my head, that was like the back, but I think it might have just been a protective cover paper for the cold press paper. So I did another demo on the textured side, and I think it worked out as well. Surprisingly, both sides of this paper are really nice to use. Even the back of the paper, it behaves more like a hot press paper, and then the front of the paper is really cold press paper. So you kind of have a 2-in-1 here. And since the block doesn't really have a backing of sorts, you can just flip it around to use whichever texture you want to use for your painting. I don't know if that's the intended use for it, but turns out that it's pretty great. Also, when I painted on this paper, I tried to go for like wet and wet and to put some water on the paper to see how it would behave since it's glued on two sides. And it didn't buckle at all and it didn't move and it dried out pretty flat. So all in all, I think this is a really fun travel watercolor block. You might need to put it in some sort of protective envelope if you travel with it, but as it is, I think it is really awesome. I wouldn't know how to attach it to the palette itself, but to use either by holding it in your hands or putting it on a table, it is a really neat little block of paper. So my overall takes for these supplies, the palette, I really like the idea of it. I really, really like it. And I think it has a lot of good things going for it. There's a couple of things that could be improved. I think it might be great to have a way to change the angle of the easel part of the palette. I tried playing around with the screws on the side, but I wasn't able to really figure it out. So maybe that's user error, that could be me. Also, having the non-skid surface at the bottom could be an improvement in the sense that it would stabilize the whole thing if you use it on the table, and then it would also help if you use a tripod plate with it to really secure the tripod plate to the palette. I really like how compact it is. I really like how everything is stored within the palette itself. It could be seen as a little bit of an issue that it doesn't take any kind of pans, but since the set comes with pans, I don't think it's all that bad. And I really like the way of securing the pans in, to slide them into a specific tray for them. That's kind of a cool idea. And it's all plastic, so it won't rust. That's also a big thing for me. The pull knobs appear to be brass, and brass doesn't rust, so that's good. But yeah, that's what I think of this palette. I think it is really cool. A couple of tweaks here and there would make it even better, but overall, this is a really fun travel palette. And then the cube block that is glued on two sides, I think it's really awesome, honestly. I really like this option of using a smoother paper or a more textured paper just by flipping it around. And the glue on the two sides seem to hold really well for the paper. As with any block, I would try to avoid painting all the way to the sides of the paper, but I don't tend to do that anyway, so for me that worked out really well. I will have all the links to these two items in the description if you want to go check them out for yourself and see for yourself more photos, more info about these. At the moment of posting this video, I think there's a sale going on too, so if that's something that you were waiting for, now's a good time. Aside from that, I would like to thank LIGHTWISH for sending me these items to test out. I really appreciate it, and I had a really fun time playing out with these. And also a great big thank you to you guys for watching this video. I hope you learned something or were entertained, hopefully. See you all in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.